Hi, my name is Grant Millin, and I'm running for Asheville City Council. And the theme for my campaign is that we all require a more valuable future, and that's a reference to sustainability and making the future better than today on environmental, social, and economic baselines. And also that relates to American liberal democracy and the U.S. The preamble to the U.S. Constitution when it comes to working towards a more perfect union that is for posterity. And I summarize that big idea with the tagline, "Make Asheville Future Ready." This presentation is about the City of Asheville boards and commissions restructure, and particularly as to public safety strategy. I don't know how many citizens even know that City of Asheville is talking about really rearranging its boards and commissions, like the Multimodal Transportation Committee and the African American Heritage Commission, and doing away with some of these. And it's important to understand that they're also talking about making changes to the council committees that are led by the council members, and they're about big ideas like public safety that are big ideas for a municipality, and we need to be getting right today, especially today. And there can be, I'm going to talk about how to include racial justice and talk about the other ideas that they're talking about with this healthy environment and safe communities committee idea that would several things would overlap and integrate with public safety somehow, like stormwater management, climate, and recreation, which aren't things to set aside and let happen as is with a municipality either. So, what is the City of Asheville restructure and phase one? City of Asheville restructure means this is what's going on, as far as I can tell, is not just about boards and commissions. It's about what happens at strategic retreats. In March 17th and 18th was the City of Asheville City Council retreat, which is about the Vision 2036 strategic operating plan and priorities. And they haven't posted those priorities as of me creating this webinar, at least on Sunday, May the 15th. So strategic management and what, it's obvious what a municipality is, but quite frankly, we have a charter that goes back to a city charter that goes back to the 1930s, and what a municipality is today, quite frankly, may be different than it was in the 1930s. It may be different than it was 20 years ago. The budget has increased 3 times in the past 20 years. The demands of citizens, the migration to Asheville, there's mission creep. And understanding strategic management and what I call strategic innovation, or the mix of strategy and innovation, and applying that not to Silicon Valley IPOs, initial public offerings, or the big platform innovation corporations, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Google, and not running things like a corporation, but taking a look at strategy and innovation at the municipal level is what COA, City of Asheville Restructure, is about, and just renaming this, reframing what's going on, really. And phase one, there isn't a phase one. The mayor, the council, and the city manager hasn't authorized me or anyone else to reframe strategic management with City of Asheville, our city hall. The Center of Progress, I'm just introducing that. It's my leadership movement that I look forward to developing, and it's about American liberal democracy and sustainability, and seeing that progress. We didn't get it right every time in America over the past almost 300 years. We didn't get it right in Asheville every time, but what is progress? And also I'm going to apply my strategic innovation ideas, and I'm through my management consulting for public good business, and I'm developing a national impact 501c3 nonprofit. How to get in touch with me and learn more about me, grantmillin.com, and my Medium channel or blog site is grantmillin.medium.com. First, I want to be clear about something. I'm not opposed to the idea of reimagining public safety. I focus on other strategic arenas besides law enforcement too. This is one case study about proposed changes to City of Asheville, or COA. I'm going to start using that acronym now to save my breath and your eyeball strength. This is one case study about, this presentation is about one case study about proposed changes to COA public safety strategy, including lack of coherent, consistent, and congruent public safety strategy. Are we at the point where we're saying City of Asheville public safety strategy is not coherent, consistent, and congruent? We can talk about those words in the future and decide. So, COA Council Committee Restructure model as of May 10th. Something City of Asheville shared in in a slide deck about this boards and commission restructure is the council committees being restructured. These are committees the council members and the mayor serve on. There to the left is the current structure, and there's public safety squared off in red. To the right is the proposed structure, and public safety becomes something mixed with stormwater management, climate and recreation, some other things, called Healthy Environment Safe Community Committee. And I'm actually going to be showing you my ideas for 3 council committees. So there's not so many committees for council members to go to, and there's focusing, but we leave public safety, the Public Safety Committee. And that doesn't mean we leave public safety, the issues of public safety alone and stay in the past and leave out racial equity. It's just stormwater management, recreation, and climate. And I'm for all those things. And part of my platform, my 12 solutions, includes the anthropogenic climate to climate protection transition. And I have to read that because I don't say that. I haven't said that spoken that term in public very often. The anthropogenic climate to climate protection transition is something that's one of my 12 top 12 solutions. That's part of my campaign, and I've been focused on sustainability for many years, and my bachelor's degree is about sustainability. So I'm not opposed to these issues. It's just public safety needs to be not compartmentalized and siloed off from a systems approach. And let me continue, and I'll share how I approach that whole systems approach while leaving public safety. So mission creep. These changes with strategic management and City of Asheville, and if folks don't know what mission creep is, it's the mission of an organization where you start out on day one is one mission, and then as things move along, more demands are put on the organization, changes come up, and it's a idiom, mission creep. Nothing the people of Asheville, state of North Carolina, and the United States of America, and the globe encountered over the past several years is really just about too many or too few municipal advisory boards. And with all of that, a massive facelift to a municipality's public safety strategy is about the duties of the city manager, mayor, and council, still about those duties, even with the changes around us. The public safety mission arena is not just about another poorly performing citizen advisory board. So what is the public safety mission really with the City of Asheville? The transformation demands of Asheville citizens, Asheville migration trends, and then adding the June 20 civil unrest that is about George Floyd and prayers for George Floyd and his soul and his family. And it's not wrong to have brought up racial justice issues. COVID-19 and an overall sustainability uncertainty provides a lot of mission creep fuel. The COA mission is on the line, and a new approach to strategy and innovation applied in a municipal context is needed. COA restructure. So simplifying is a great thing in strategy and innovation. And you simplify to weed out bad ideas and things that aren't efficient and effective anymore in an organization or a product or a service, and in the business context. And strategy and innovation combined, which is a term that's used in the billion-dollar management consulting world that helps big corporations like Apple and Google and Facebook and Amazon make lots of money. How do you apply that to a municipality, and not about increasing revenues, but making the sustainability experience work and make the future better than today? That's what I mean by co-created strategic innovation. So there's 3 council committees in my design. The current and new council committees are leave public safety. It's not going to be the old way of doing public safety where racial justice is not a big deal. We can do reimagining public safety, but let's leave it alone because there's a whole lot going on with those demands for change while getting crime down. And by no means I'm going to be talking about a human security strategy that wraps around public safety strategy that works with substance abuse and mental health and homelessness and bringing down the drivers of crime. So system management, before there was 6 council committees, some about finance and human resources. Got to talk about waterworks, making sure water supplies are working right, transportation. Transportation department is another at-risk organizational health issue with City of Asheville. And then a committee that's about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and wellness, and racial justice for sure. I have to talk about citizens with disabilities, and there's different constituencies that need justice too. LGBTQ, women, and children and elderly folks. Then those 2 columns, one says municipal strategic innovation and the other says sustainability master strategy. That's where a lot of change and transformation and new efficiencies and effectiveness can occur. And I'm going to explain both and how they work together. COA restructure is more than rearranging civic engagement and just how many advisory boards there are. In reality, there's changes to the number of advisory boards. It's the whole strategic management big picture with Asheville City Hall that is up for grabs. The second bullet is, I'll read that. The the performance difference between the COA restructure and the Center of Project Progress platform. And the Center of Progress, I'm introducing that right here, that I'm interested in developing new leaders in Asheville and beyond. And that's leadership is what gets you new directions in strategy and innovation. And then the changes COA has proposed so far is about transparency, and not that anybody's hiding anything. It's just, I don't think people, I think people who want to lead at City Hall in a new way, we need to get past this boards and commissions work, because you got to start getting that coherence, consistency, and congruence going. And it's not transparent in terms of those things, like coherence maybe. And and believe me, I don't know everything. I'm just delving into this in a different way. These City of Asheville strategic management issues, that it's clear that that's what's going on. Is the strategy itself is on the table. COA is changing, but how? There isn't a manual about municipal strategy and innovation. Just demanding more transformation and better COA outcomes is different than an intelligent, empathetic, and ethical mix of strategy and innovation, or what I call strategic innovation. There is this effort to alter public safety, the Public Safety Committee, to something very different, with less focus on actual public safety, fire response, and something we should be thinking more of with the June 20 civil unrest and COVID-19 and more climate impacts. That is disaster preparedness and response. So getting public safety strategy right is a big deal. Moving from unknown unknowns. Donald Rumsfeld wasn't a funny guy to me, but his sardonic reference to unknown unknowns while answering press questions as the war in Iraq unfolded was memorable as to defining or deflecting governance accountability, meaning he was defining. There's this episode where press is asking him for more and more specifics, and he just reframes everything to say, I'm not really telling you everything because, hey, it's national security and this is the way the Bush administration is doing things. That is not all going to be clear to you all until the big picture is revealed and success is achieved. And so he's defining a deflective approach to governance and accountability, and we don't want that model. So what are the COA restructure unknown unknowns? And I don't know everything, but I'm interested in working with folks and seeing what they think, our citizens and other members of council and the city manager and her staff, or his staff in the future. Avoiding getting it wrong on governance accountability with the COA restructure, definitely including a range of strategically definitive historical issues like racial equity, needs a combined risk management approach and strategic innovation mentality. So a new way of thinking basically is what COA restructure is about, and saying, simply put, it's about the strategy, the what is City of Asheville today, and how do we formulate and achieve aims. And with innovation, it's creating new and renewing value, and there's just a array of ways we can do that. So let's call it COA restructure. Good strategy and innovation are about defining a more valuable future. And first, the most empathetic, ethical, and intelligent leader identifies the true nature of the challenge. Instead of advisory boards, the COA boards and commissions restructure is about, probably, I think, about citizen demands and what COA can do or cannot do about all of that while confronting an increasingly risky sustainability uncertainty frontier. What is the sustainability uncertainty frontier? How much greenhouse gases is too much, and when do we find out? And is racial justice turning things, requests of racial justice turning things around? Should we include citizens with disabilities? It's just where are we at with inflation? And we can do a presentation on the sustainability uncertainty frontier and how close we are to it, and how to avoid passing from some control to total uncertainty. So somehow minimizing traditional public safety strategy along the way with COA Restructure, the version 1, that is the COA. What COA rolled out this year, and with what is currently referred to as the COA Boards and Commissions Restructure at present, reduces the citywide ability to identify the true nature of our many challenges, one being rising crime rates. Let's call this an overall strategic management restructure, or COA restructure. So here's the sustainability master strategy. To the left column, I talk about municipal strategic innovation again. And there's these 5 focus areas, and they're for council members, the mayor and city manager and her staff, and active citizens, or what I call citizen experts, or expert citizens who are on boards and commissions right now, nonprofit partners, adjacency partners, Buncombe County government, state of North Carolina, federal government, to talk about some focused areas. And one is human security, and human security is where we can change up that just the traditional police. APD stands for Asheville Police Department, AFD, Asheville Fire Department, emergency and disaster preparedness and response, add public health, add community planning with a digital twin. I don't go into what a digital twin is in much depth in this presentation, but it's a visualization of a municipality and helps with planning. And this new Citizen Engagement Congress and Academy, which I'm also not going to go into a whole lot, but it's one of my 12 solutions with my campaign. And that's one body or a Congress at a municipal level. And it obviously doesn't have the powers of a Congress, and it can't supersede what the council and the mayor and city manager, what their authority is. But one body that votes on issues, and there's 7 to 9 executive board members that goes down to council and interacts and represents this larger Congress, and quite frankly, more gets done online, because 100 people driving down to City Hall it defies reduction in greenhouse gases, for one thing, and nobody can afford gas prices right now. Climate protection, won't go over that. Infrastructure, when you think about that as housing and multimodal transportation, waterworks, that's a important element of what system management is. And then revising what we think economic development is. And I'm not going to talk about ramping down the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority and ramping up. Probably won't be called the Community Economic Development 3.0 organization that folks interact with and changes how economic development is. That's just a description of the theme of this new approach to economic development. It's 3.0 because 1 isn't good enough, 2 isn't good enough. That's the old way of doing things. It's got to be the 3.0 version. And then this other group, that team that is about leadership, dedicated civic engagement, and intelligence. And I'll go back. I'll be showing you the municipal strategic innovation matrix next. And then the base of Asheville's sustainably master strategy is that justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and wellness framework that allows different constituencies to be heard and to have unmet needs addressed. And by no means does it mean ramping down and sending racial justice to an off-ramp of success. There shouldn't be any going back on racial equity. So then the far right is the Civilization Health Index, and this is about measuring success. And one of the things that we might come up with, think of there, is greenhouse gas reduction, and it's been kind of weak there, quite frankly, with City of Asheville. In spite of a sustainability master plan getting done in 2009, and GDP, or gross domestic product, that is a measurement of success, and GDP for Asheville was 22 billion most recently. But there's other criteria like a happiness index, and there's a global happiness index, and Scandinavian nations usually come out the winners on that. Here's the Municipal Strategic Innovation Matrix. There's those 5 themes. And by the way, when the bottom left, strategic innovation team and value synthesis arena, leadership, dedicated civic engagement, and intelligence. Intelligence can mean intelligence gathering, not unlike the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, except obviously we aren't spying on the people of Asheville. It's about new ideas. And also, intelligence is about the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. So there's these groups, these teams, and they're not just council members, and the staff has a different role. And it makes, I want the City of Asheville staff experience to be exciting and innovative, and when they come up with ideas, they should be encouraged to do that. It's just you have an innovation practice, and more folks are involved in strategy questions, and maybe there's some cultural changes that will come along with this municipal strategic innovation approach. And value synthesis is it's not that we want to run City of Asheville like a corporation, but getting to the value proposition all the time in a business is important, and there's a value proposition about the City of Asheville. I'm back. So enablement is that Congress, Citizen Engagement Congress and Academy, a digital twin. I'm not going to go into what a digital twin is again in much depth here. That staff co-creation culture shift, maybe it'll be different. So, what is enablement about the City of Asheville strategy and our innovation practice? And at the bottom there of those 4 other components of enablement, the departments that represent staff. I'm using numbers. I'm just not going to write Department of Transportation, Transportation Department, I'm sorry, it's not called the Department of Transportation with City of Asheville. Public Works, APD, I'm just using numbers to represent those different departments. The appointed management is the municipal executive, or we call it the city manager, the City of Asheville. The elected leadership, represented by those council committees that need to be defined from all these boards and commissions and task forces that are at the base there, as well as external or adjacency partnerships with county government, state, federal, public input that it gets generated about all the activities of a municipality, and consultants. City of Asheville hires a lot of consultants, and frankly, there may be less hiring of consultants because we are better at strategy. We have more capabilities with strategy and innovation in a municipal context going forward. And then also in that elected leadership column, the mayor and council, of course. And that's, the buck stops there. And I wanted to insert the appointed and elected leadership components when we're talking about strategy and innovation. And it's because it's not about rearranging, again, not about rearranging the citizen volunteer boards and commissions. Here's a moment to take a breath, and folks can take a break and come back in a minute to this. I understand it's a long video. I'm happy to share my thoughts and share my capabilities. And let's continue. So what is your strategic innovation? What is your version of mixing strategy and innovation? And I look forward to fostering that in Asheville and elsewhere in the future, and sharing my management consulting for public good business, and hopefully this national impact 501c3 nonprofit in the future. So I'm interested in hearing from the public now. I'm interested in hearing what you think of rearranging City of Asheville. What is it, and how do we get results better from our Asheville City Hall, and hopefully this will be a movement to ask how things are going with government, as well as the rest of the system, business, nonprofits, education, medicine. There's plenty to talk about with sustainability. So here's an example of that term, strategic management, a strategic management communications example. It's from the Dogwood Health Trust mid-year impact report from 2001. And I'm not going to read what it says, but it's something you might see in an annual report. They're talking about how they deliver on their strategic priorities, and it's how are we shaping our work is a good way of one way of describing strategy. If you think of strategy as just a table with vision and mission and strategy and overall strategy, what is the organization and how it delivers value, or how we shape work, and then goals and objectives and action plans. That's a important model for thinking about strategic management, but we can upgrade this because it's about making things happen, and it's about formulation and achievement of aims, and when you add that innovation element, creation of new and renewing value, and combining strategy and innovation. It seems to me a generalist term, strategic innovation, for dealing with our big whole systems issues like what is sustainability for Asheville citywide, How does City of Asheville come in? Where do different partners come in? And they have a Dogwood Health Trust does a pretty good job at showing a theory of change and strategic inputs that inform our work, and what comes out are sustainable, equitable, generational change outcomes. So strategic management, I like that. That's a good example of quickly covering what is meant by strategic management. And strategic innovation by no means excludes strategic management. Strategic innovation is about that kind of traditional, how do you display strategy, and adding a bunch of tools like on the development and implementation front, everything from design thinking to project management, other things like strategic foresight. So what is the basics of why you look at changing how strategic management works? And when it comes to a community like Asheville, there's the business as usual world. That's externalizing things like greenhouse gases, racial justice, LGBTQ justice, the wellness of children and the elderly and citizens with disabilities and their rights. Then when you start thinking about change, you might try mimicking other communities, ideas that are in books or on the internet, and not avoiding misinformation, but good ideas, but just copycatting good ideas. I don't think that's really enough today. And mimicking leadership. I like Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But I'm looking for more. I'm looking for leaders to be ready to do more today. And you can try radical innovation, and that's kind of like business as usual. That it's business as usual in mimicking. They input on the community position, and radical transformation, and people saying just we need to have transformation of all kinds right now, and just do it, and we'll tell you later what we mean by transformation. They're asking communities to come over to their world. So the error points is kind of an output direction. Strategic innovation is about the community, and it's about what people know already, and it's about expert citizens and nonprofits, and but then reaching outside of the current community position and looking around the United States and the free world for ideas, and comparing and allowing imagination to flow. And what I refer to genius. And genius is about going into the white space and finding new ways of doing things, and applying that to a better ability to identify opportunities and work with challenges and solutions and outcomes in new and imaginative, empathetic and ethical ways. So this is about my company, and there it is, StratGen. And what my consultancy does is work with this space I call the front end of strategic innovation. And in innovation practices, the fuzzy front end of innovation is about data and opportunities and challenges and solutions and outcomes, and what other people are doing, what competitors are doing if it's a business sense, and in a municipal sense, it can be kind of competing against ourselves, and municipalities do compete against other municipalities in some ways for resources and what big new corporation moves to town in conventional economic development strategy. And so there's this beginning of ideas and change. That's the front end of strategic innovation. And challenges and outcomes get identified there. Hey, we see challenges and we want different outcomes. Things aren't staying the same anymore. And then the X factor future is, X factor is a definition of X factor in some dictionaries now. It's the unpredictable factor. And the future is filled with unpredictable factors. And when you have those two realms, what's coming at you, and a lot of that from the past, and then how the current state and the past is influencing the future, and just who knows what will happen in the future, you want to do something in the middle there, inside those brackets. And by the way, the X factor future has a lot of outcomes, and those outcomes create challenges for us. So in my definition of mixing strategy and innovation, just strategy plus innovation, the dynamic hybrid power of mixing strategy and innovation, that's strategic innovation in simple terms, not necessarily what those big Silicon Valley corporations, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple are doing, and how a municipality can be more like a corporation. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. My consultancy goes there in the middle and helps folks shape the future. And who are those folks? Leaders and citizens collaborating with my consultancy, just to go over some basics about what StratGen does. And my consultancy, StratGen, works with a set of tools, a framework that one part is called the design and decision delta, and it's a triangle in it. So it refers to the Greek symbol of change, delta. And then there's a strategic innovation system, and I'm not going to cover those, but that's my methodology, and it's called Delta System. And here's an example of a StratGen strategic innovation platform map, and my practices of solution design and human ecosystems and open project management and setting up possibly offices of strategic innovation. And there's again there would be a different branding. You don't call new initiatives strategic innovation platform X. And I've got an example of a strategic innovation platform example that I look forward to sharing in the future that starts with Asheville. So in those green thought bubbles, those practices create new and renewing intellectual capital formation, and other practices like data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. It's kind of like the scientific method. Hypothesis to theory, and yet we're using some ideas from information technology today that like using the internet. There's data, information levels, new knowledge is formed, new understandings after applying the knowledge, and new wisdom when you use intelligence, apply skills with knowledge, and new wisdom is formed. And that's where intellectual capital identification occurs. Solution design is about developing a business plan, but a lot of times it's the concept level of, after you've been looking in that front end of strategic innovation, and comparing that to potential outcomes in the X Factor future. And there's something new, CHIC, civilization, health, intellectual capital, and strategic innovation platforms that are designed to develop civilization, health, intellectual capital. And I'm not going to go over civilization, health, intellectual capital, but it's basically saying, it's basically an explanation. It's basically value creation for sustainability. It's really, you would think that sustainability is kind of an industry, and just a way of doing things in all sectors today, but it's not. It's still kind of, well, let's cut greenhouse gases, but the whole picture of how to rearrange civilization really is missing, and how to deliver new health outcomes. It's kind of still about what is GDP and how cool is the new technology, and it isn't a system-wide perspective as much as we need. And you saw me mention human ecosystems, and I'm not going to go over what human ecosystems are, but it's a difference to, it's more of that civilization health value versus corporate innovation ecosystems. And this is a cool model graphic from Innovation Leader, and they're a thought leadership consultancy that develops graphics like this, and it helps people understand what a corporate innovation ecosystem like the ones surrounding that again, Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, how they develop all that value. So I'm not gonna go into this. This is too much. I've started talking about the City of Asheville boards and commissions, restructure, reframing that as the City of Asheville restructure, big idea about strategic management. And I've brought up something called Community Economic Development 3.0. And the reason I've started to talk about this term intellectual capital, and it's different than intellectual property or IP and a patent. This intellectual capital that I'm talking about is a different kind of economy for Asheville, and we need this. we need this with changing from the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority model to something Community Economic Development 3.0. And what do we do to fill out the blanks and keep incomes, raise incomes in Asheville? And when it comes to municipal governing, there's some intellectual capital work going on here. And they kicked this off with the boards and commissions restructure, and I'm changing it intellectually to a overall strategic management restructure of what we think of as City of Asheville and how things are done at City Hall. And this is something I'm still talking about, still working on, Civilization Health Index and Civilization Health Intellectual Capital. But it's what strategic innovation delivers, and it takes strategic innovation minds, people that are good, leaders that are good at working with strategy and combining what we've thought about strategy being and innovation being. And when you start bringing those two ideas together, you're changing minds, and genius takes off and flourishes. And intellectual capital is an idea that was used more around the turn of the century, around the late 90s and early 2000s, and I think it needs to come back, and I think it needs to apply to sustainability. and what civilization health is about overall, rather than just short-term profits. So I've shared a whole bunch. Take a break. If I was in person with you all, I'd take questions from folks, and feel free to get in touch with me and share anything you wish. By the way, this presentation includes many visuals as I have a creative background. Visuals communicate ideas, model processes, and spread creativity. So strategic innovation, COA, restructure, and center of progress. And again, it's not going to be that in depth on the center of progress portion, but you've kind of gotten some components. And I know I've just gone in a whole bunch of different arenas, but I'm really interested in starting with City of Asheville, talking about what economic development is in Asheville differently, because I see all that creativity and intellectual capital in Asheville all the time, and it's not just me. I'm just really interested in working with folks and helping to pull together this Asheville genius in a different way. And I think definitely City of Asheville can do that all that better, and do it with an empathy, with ethics, and a genius that's about things like racial justice for certain. So the COA Restructure and Center of Progress platform I hope to develop with allies is about options produced around our American liberal democracy principles as the basis for new strategy and tangible innovation utility, like civilization health, intellectual capital outcomes, or COA restructure. Scaling up to defining new characteristics in the development process of identifying the best future mayor and city manager, and getting a new city charter done are not necessarily first steps, but everything is on the table. And I like our new mayor. I like our current mayor, Esther Mannheimer, but she's going to be, if she wins, and I want her to win, her third term as mayor, she can't be mayor forever. And a city manager is someone who they can resign our current city manager one day could say, I'm resigning in 2 weeks, like a lot of people have been doing with City Hall, and developing some options for the next city manager is a good thing. And I'm going to talk about a new city charter. That's difficult to just get a new city charter, but there's been a lot of changes, and there's a model city charter that a municipal leadership organization promotes that I'll talk about in a minute. So the process of developing new and uniquely valuable real options is really the main thing I hope to assist in. And this whatever the changes are with City Hall, it's not just going to be about me. And COA restructure, it's about COA specific center of progress. Again, not focused on so much in this presentation, is about COA and Asheville citywide, unified strategy and innovation options. Starts with what is on the minds of allies to this platform change, not just for City of Asheville, but citywide. And what happens when we consciously look at different Asheville futures or future state outcomes. I'm going to change these 2 slides. These 2 slides I had a little bit of trouble going through, but I'm sharing new insights, and they're new insights for me, and I'm just trying to stimulate discussion with folks who are really interested in seeing great outcomes for Asheville. So excuse me if I continue to work on these slides, and all this needs to be broken down into several presentations rather than just one huge video. So Here's an example of restructuring strategy and an example of the kind of leadership knowledge the Center of Progress might be about. A strategic foresight consultant recently developed a couple of Asheville related projects, and they actually go back a few years now at this point. Strategic innovation is about platforms linked to ecosystems and changing the rules of the game consciously and openly and skillfully. Use of strategic foresight with other principles like design thinking and project management for value synthesis is part of what strategic innovation means to me. And when I train folks in strategic innovation, it's what everybody else does with what I lay out for them in a co-creation settings. As a council member, I do some of that. I will get to share some of that. A lot of it will be about what other council members are doing and bringing up, and about the city manager and her staff, and definitely about the ideas from citizens of Asheville. I believe Asheville is well suited for application of strategic innovation, and it seems there is a need to look at politics, social, and other sustainability issues and connect to a new approach to economic development. Creativity in developing options initially is not super expensive, but takes commitment, time, and heart. And here's something real fast. Because I won't go over Center of Progress again in too much detail, but Center of Progress is a leadership movement that makes American liberal democracy more of a sustainably oriented prospect. Indeed, the preamble to the U.S. Constitution includes many values that have been hit or missed so far, but the conclusion with the preamble is that it is for ourselves and posterity, which is like a kind of a sustainability idea. Asheville is a great location to start such a movement. At the same time, the Center of Progress is not necessarily something I would emphasize while competing, not completing, while completing and council duties. So just wanted to share that I'm working on the Center of Progress. I hope it's influential, that developing new leaders for these boards and commissions, for council members, for mayors. It's really interesting how to get people talking about sustainability in a fresh way by making them better strategists and innovators who are focused on empathy and ethics, and using letting everybody to share their genius on these sustainability issues. So one last thing about the Center of Progress, ideas like reviewing the COA Charter, the Sustainability Master Strategy, and related municipal strategic innovation matrix for Asheville spell out a kind of restructure beyond boards and commissions. Again, this strategic innovation definition of restructure is not about austerity or radical budget cuts. At the same time, part of the value of COA restructuring criteria for the Asheville Civilization Health Index can most certainly be economic, and economic in terms of making the city of Asheville budget deliver more, maybe with some budget cuts, but there's so much demand on City Hall these days, and it doesn't look like there's going to be less demand. And I'm going to cut some of these slides down. I'm sorry, but I'm a Leadership Asheville graduate, and I'm looking forward to working with Leadership Asheville in new ways. And there are many efforts to enhance a progressive leadership mentality in Asheville and beyond. However, the tools can be weak. there is no combination of design thinking, strategic foresight, project management, strategy, and innovation, and whatever else is needed for our science, our version of a science of change, and how to produce valuable examples of strategic innovation, because we don't have a science of change like strategic innovation right now. Excuse me for these slides, and I appreciate you bearing with me as I keep looking at this content, and I keep seeing ways of reducing the number of slides and making things more clear. So, what is my my version of strategic innovation? What's it about? So here's an example of strategy and the players in this. Let's say it's this council campaign, this council race for 2022. Some Asheville politics novices appeared, and you know, I don't spend a lot of time criticizing folks, but I did say that there was an ultra conservative slate and an ultra progressive slate, and some of them were not novices. I think the conservatives were more brand new to the Asheville politics scene, and there's some Asheville politics insiders. They're backed by politicians who've been in office for a long time, and not necessarily bad people, but what I think is the bigger picture than just who's running for council is the perspective on Asheville in context of planetary health and civilization health. And I know people just want to talk about public safety, but I'm trying to come back to where this public safety and so many people wanting to move to Asheville because of climate migration. It is correct to wrap around more of this sustainably big picture around public safety. I know people just want to say, get more APD officers on patrol and increase the budget for Asheville Police Department. But if more people are moving here, more people in crisis move here, leaving out the rest of the sustainability big picture, I think is wrong. So that what's happening with anthropogenic climate, or the human altered climate, and our civilization health in Asheville, they're in relation. And Asheville politics, I don't think has really gotten to this big picture yet, in spite of all the folks interested in sustainability issues, who are the expert citizens. And there's expert citizens on different kinds of issues: multimodal transportation, racial justice, what's going on with women, the rights of children, and I want to help pull out the capabilities of folks focused on citizens with disabilities more. But how are we all interacting around those two big thought bubbles, planetary health and civilization health? I think we're ready for some changes. And my leadership model is about empathy, ethics, and ethic. An ethic as in a group ethic, a personal ethic, and then ethics. They're a little bit different things. And genius, and I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm really more interested in helping pull out the genius of folks, and genius is about going in to the white space, is a term in innovation, a blank page, and loading in different factors and insights that are happening in the world around you, and that front end of strategic innovation, thinking about the future, that X factor future, and drawing a new picture. So there it is again, the front end of strategic innovation and X factor future. Others might talk about empathy ethics or an ethic and genius and line them up like that. But when you put your leadership capabilities in context to everything that's going on around you and what the future may or may hold, I think so much of leadership today is short-termism. And here's more about my strategic innovation mind leadership model. Those 5 components are still there. The middle purple triangle is about capabilities and strategic innovation and shaping better or worse outcomes that are heading towards us and that we can develop with conscious effort. And there's a lot to be proud of with City of Asheville and Asheville citywide. I'm just interested in seeing how folks what other folks come up with about this question. Isn't Asheville at a crossroads about its mission and how it's working with strategy and innovation? And I just want to share that all of us being better strategists and innovators and thinking about whatever we might call it personally, I call it a strategic innovation mind or a mindset that's about working with what's coming at us and the future in different ways. And I think a lot of us agree that empathy and ethics are part of it, and a good kind of genius, because, by the way, malevolent geniuses create a whole bunch of havoc. And here's there's a Yale PhD who did a book about genius traits, and here's a list of genius traits. And if you have these traits, you may be a genius. The big deal about a genius is that if you think you are one and you are good at delivering value, that's part of the definition of genius. It's not just being smart. But the other point of genius is what is the Asheville genius? And I think there's quite a few folks with these traits in Asheville, and I think they may be folks that work for City of Asheville and people in council. Getting a genius trait in City of Asheville operations and strategic management, and talking about public safety strategy, and then that whole other list of 5 strategic innovation value synthesis areas in the municipal strategic innovation matrix. It's worth diving in. I think it's worth diving in and coming up with some new practices that draw out genius and help us apply genius. And here's a model that this Yale PhD came up with. G equals S times N times D. G stands for genius, which equals the significance S of strategic innovation impact, or how we're working with strategy and innovation, multiplied by the number of people reached and time and the time duration of the impact, D. Meaning an impact that is short term. Maybe some genius came in and it was significant, but time, significance, and number of people reached there's a kind of a GDP, a gross domestic product way of saying, okay, that's some genius, but here's the big geniuses and here's how they impacted history. And then there's a definition of genius, that it's unique brilliance and For a new solution to be relevant to the remainder of the 21st century, Genius needs to be about pluralism and an ethic bent on the capability to change civilization for the better, or we should hope, because malevolent geniuses create all kinds of problems. Now, I'm going to talk about me running on council real fast, and the council members who can talk about public safety and the rest of this big picture is, I think, a big deal. Among other reasons, I asked the high-level strategic questions: what is a high-performance municipality, and how close is City of Asheville and Asheville citywide to that high-performance, higher standard of what a municipality is as to good, bad, and mediocre municipalities? I don't think we got a great successor on the 2022 ballot for Mayor Mannheimer, and Esther Mannheimer is pretty awesome. I really like her, and I'm glad that I believe that she'll be reelected. But how can we better develop city leadership in a proactive manner? Because I think that there could have been a couple of really great competitors for Esther, and the people that were her competitors were not bad people. I would just like to have seen two of them being making it a super big challenge as to the next mayor, and maybe Esther would and somebody else could be mayor. Then I'm just thinking Esther will be reelected, but I think that mayor right now is a big deal for Asheville, and it would have been fine if there was a really major competitor for the Asheville mayor slot. It's not a council job to recruit mayors, but I'm free to assist as a citizen in these leadership issues. And of course, leading is about being a council member. I'm running for Asheville City Council because I've been observing and participating in COA activities for many years, the capabilities I possess of strategy innovator, and as the owner of a management consulting for public good business, and as the founder of a to be announced national impact 501c3 nonprofit are needed. I provide definitions of strategy and innovation in this presentation, but it's partly about but it's part about strategy as to consistence, coherence, and congruence that calls me to share my vision for COA Restructure and the Center of Progress. So, and here's more about the mayor options and the other council voter options. I thought that, and I say that there were ultra conservatives and there were ultra progressives on the ballot, and there were some that were insiders, and some were not, that were novices. But I think that, and I think it was a lot of what the conservative message, the conservative slate on the Asheville council ballot, and there was a conservative mayor option on the ballot, that they were kind of the double down on BAU, the BAU being business as usual folks. There were some radical transformation folks that you might say are the ultra progressives or very progressive folks. And when in business innovation, when you say, hey, we've come up with a radical transformation, it's going to leapfrog this industry or this type of product down the road 10 years. Like the COVID-19 vaccine. Many people thought that might take a really long time to come up with a vaccine, but because innovation in pharmaceuticals had been a strong practice, it was not as difficult as some might have imagined just 10 years ago. And then there's me with the COA Restructure and a Center for Progress leadership movement. And I am happy that I did all of this work, and I've thought about a different platform for Asheville, starting with the city hall, and and how to develop new leaders and what leadership is today, and is American liberal democracy something to hate and throw out, just like public safety strategy? No, we're not. We're not really throwing. Nobody's really proposing. There was defunding the police, but most people are saying we need law enforcement, but we need to do things differently with the rest of that big picture. And I'm happy to reframe things. I'm happy to help reframe things right now. And those options. A new city charter would be difficult. It's a possibility. And these center of progress leaders that I hope to be in allyship with, maybe that's something that people start talking about. I think that existing municipalities adopting a brand new city charter, usually a brand new city charter, this is my understanding, is that they are about defunct municipalities. Maybe they lose their population and they merge with a different municipality. And this is something to go back and review. What is the National Civic League? What is the National Civic League target municipalities with their model city charter? I think the laws are different in different states. And I think that getting a new city charter in Asheville may not just happen. But we've already made some changes, and thinking about the city charter is not necessarily that comes up all the time. Here's a picture of me, and future versions of this presentation. I think I'll put this further up front. I'm a strategy innovator and CEO of a management consulting for public good business. And strategy innovator means that strategy is what I'm interested in innovating. And there's our city hall in the background. And I think that's what's needed right now is thinking about the whole mission creep issues, and what is the City of Asheville mission today, and for a more sustainable future. My education, a couple of graduate business degrees, took many MBA courses, and I developed an interdisciplinary studies independent degree, Bachelor of Arts in Sustainability and Security Studies at UNC Asheville. Just went over what I think being a strategy innovator is, and I'm not gonna talk about myself too much, but there's a slide on what I think being a strategy innovator is, and it's something I actually want to help folks develop for themselves, along with that, along with drawing out genius and empathy and what our personal ethics and community ethics or group ethics are about these days. And here's a different, here's something about framing what my consultancy that focuses on strategic innovation, this management consulting for public good business, helps people shape the future with strategic innovation. And my version of strategic innovation is about maneuvering leadership and platforms. And I was in the Navy, so a picture of my ship helps talk about these issues as a metaphor. And ships maneuver. Does city hall, do municipalities maneuver? They're both about leadership, and they're about platforms and platform innovation. And I've talked about these platform innovation corporations: Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple. that ship is a platform too, and a municipality is a platform. So innovation and platform, in terms like platform innovation, they always gets talked about in the context of the current big Silicon Valley corporations or the next one coming along, coming out. And this ship, it's about, some people will say it's not about public good, but when the ship isn't being being used in a combat context, but in a disaster relief context, those helicopters land in disaster areas and evacuate people to the ship, and there's lots of berthing area and hospital capacity on that ship, and they can be evacuated on that ship. It's when you reframe things and switch around perspective on things, that's definitely part of what both strategy and great strategists and great innovators are good at, reframing things and switching things around. So the strategic innovation big idea is that strategy is the formulation and achievement of aims. Innovation is the creation of new and renewing value. And one would think that the hybrid dynamic power of strategy plus innovation is part of what's called economic development today, being skilled at applied mixtures of empathy, ethics, and as much genius as possible in issues like sustainability-oriented community economic development seems like one example of modern leadership. And I think that when you take these ideas of strategy and innovation out of just Silicon Valley or out of military flag officer, generals, and admiral officer level thinking, and apply it to what's going on in cities like Asheville, I think there's a lot of possibilities. Strategic innovation indeed defines novelty, but should not be unfamiliar, difficult to adopt practice. Should not be an unfamiliar, difficult to adopt practice for leaders. If we don't know much about strategy and innovation, and best of all, the hybrid dynamic power of strategy plus innovation, then it seems like a lot of leadership capabilities off the table as sustainability gets more dicey. And here's a couple of quotes. One's from me, but one's from someone we might call a strategy innovator, Steve Jobs. If you want to be a great leader, be mindful and project the future. And that's goes to my quote about the mind. Doing something spectacular that works requires a strategic innovation mind. And it was difficult to come up with a difference to standard strategy and innovation tools like SWOT, the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, and design thinking. But I did that with this new version of strategic innovation and my Delta system practice that, again, I'm not going over in this presentation. My strategic innovation approach and Delta system in no way eliminates the history of these other elements behind the mix of strategy and innovation as the tools like SWOT analysis and design thinking. I use those kinds of practices and more. Being skilled at strategy and innovation in desirable ways is much, much easier than having strategy and innovation happen to you in undesirable ways. And that sentence, by the way, is an example of abstraction, a key skill strategists and innovators possess. And many of us can be in dealing with abstract issues and abstraction. Are you a strategist and an innovator when faced with abstract issues? Extrapolate change is the basic, the kind of the brand message of my management consulting for public good business. We need a science of change. Semi-strategic innovation practice helps people shape the future. My company is about management consulting for public good. My company helps people maneuver the hybrid dynamic power of strategy plus innovation, or strategic innovation. And abstraction and the ability to extrapolate change. I'm just going to say look up abstraction. It's about ideas, and it's not creating new concepts, and it's not like a startup, a new nonprofit, and changing systems like an existing those of the system of an existing municipality. How to develop all of that is what strategic innovation is about, and when you are doing working with abstraction and extrapolating change differently than we're the tool than with the given tools of today, I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary to get to our sustainability goals and just define our sustainability goals. And this is more of my language that I'm working out. And working with that front end of strategic innovation, the X Factor future, or finding the currently inaccessible strategy plus innovation abstraction, connections to any related current or still to be derived concepts as to new groupings, fields, or categories are developed with practices like design thinking and strategic foresight and other practices as needed to manage challenges, solutions, and outcomes with empathy, ethics, and as much genius as possible. So we're in a abstraction space with our sustainability uncertainty. Uncertainty is headed our way, and I'm working on this all the time of how to clarify these things and reduce the number of slides in this presentation, and it will be a group of shorter presentations that I will do those things of strategy tasks of consistency, coherence, and congruence, and probably with a fewer slides in the future. And here's a little bit more about unknowns and an idea, an acronym called VOCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And using practices like those of my management consulting for public good business, a practice I call solution design, to generate the next strategic innovation like COA restructure with more desirable outcomes, more reliability, and more reliably than through attrition and random response. So that delta term that I've used in the past, the definition of delta, used in engineering and science, or change factor, can be described as macroscopic or observable system changes from energy injection and work. And that's what a lot of management consultants are about, is systems and systems thinking and transformation. Yet a relatively simple but high utility theory of change, or I call it a science of change, my strategic innovation practice. And a system for transportation is less available than we might hope for. So delta and change, it's what is the change factor with City of Asheville right now? And what are we observing when we put in the energy into something like the COA boards and commissions restructure and put a lot of work into it? What is the output? There's a formula there, and I'm really interested what's going on, because you can't mess up things like public safety strategy. And here's some references as to some Sloan Management Review articles, at least, that talk about strategic innovation in different ways. And there's one article from 1997 that actually uses the term strategic innovation. And then there's a more recent article about platforms and platform innovation, and how all those big Silicon Valley corporations, Apple, Facebook, Google, Amazon, those platform innovation companies are platform innovation. To me, is just one example of strategic innovation. So the municipal context, and a classic tool for talking about innovation is this model where you focus on core. And at the last City of Asheville strategic retreat, they talked about the core, about core services. And you can't really shrink your focus on core services like public safety, and our transportation department only needs more focus. And there's adjacencies. There's the county government, there's state, and there's the federal partners, there's nonprofit partners. And these adjacencies can make up 20% of the big picture, the ambition frontier big picture, in terms of what to change from and to. And transformation, the transformation agenda, you don't want to just not have one because it costs too much and things are going well. And so we can't invest in you don't want to get to a point where you say we're not going to invest in transformation. And 10% isn't like, we're not just going to be 10% good at racial justice. That's not what that means. The 10% of transformation is saying, when we focus on transformation, it's not necessarily that it's just 10% of the budget that's focused on racial equity. But when we do transformation and we put in that 10% of resources, we're going to get a whole lot more out of it, because we're using the core and the adjacency levels to help drive bigger transformation. And here's some examples of what is core and what are adjacencies and transformation when it comes to public safety strategy. And this model is the municipal strategic innovation portfolio for ambition management. And it isn't, again, that we shouldn't have bigger ambitions. It's that when you do the ambitious thing, you're doing strategic management with a mindset of where to focus and how to achieve what you're focusing on. And there in that upper right hand corner, you can see that transformation focus, with 10% of the resources available, you have a target, an outcome target, a return on investment target of 70% better changes, more desirable changes. And the adjacency and the core resource allocations, they don't necessarily change. It's just that you're doing things differently. You're doing things with a strategic innovation approach. And there in that box underneath on the right-hand side, you're working with the questions of what's happening at the front end with a strategic innovation approach, and how is all of our efforts confronting the X factor future. And here's something really different about the council experience and what folks are, what citizens are experiencing. And it's based on a model that you'll see in a book that I'm about to show you. But there is no model like this as to what council excellence is about, and that's a big change that I'm introducing. Is what are we talking about when we talk about not necessarily the most excellent council members personally, but what do we all bring together? And in this book I'm about to share, it's really about CEO excellence, Chief Executive Officer excellence, and it talks about in the middle there it's CEO excellence, and that blue thought bubble is about board relationships with CEOs, corporations, and again, it's not about making City of Asheville like a corporation. So in this case, it's the council relationship with a municipal executive or the city manager in that blue bubble. The next one down, I won't go over all of these, but the green bubble below the municipal executive bubble is about citizen tangibles. So those three are big in terms of what citizen expectations are getting met. And again, this is something for the future to go over in more detail. So here's that book, CEO Excellence, that just came out, and there's sections on vision and strategy. And I again, not to make City of Asheville like a corporation. It's just a book that has some I think valuable modern ideas about leadership. And here's a spot to take a break. And I know this is a really long video, and I'm going to fix some of these slides. But if you've made it this far, I'm hoping you've gotten some good insights. And take a break, and I will start up here in a second. So thinking big is what I'm about, and what my strategic innovation approach is about, and what I want for the City of Asheville organization, the council members, the mayor, and the city manager and his or her staff. The ability, the freedom to think big is not what I'm interested in stopping. I'm not interested in stopping thinking big when it comes to City of Asheville. It's certainly not for the entire citywide experience. It's just when it comes to public safety, we need to get straight on what reimagining public safety is, and the rest of the pieces of the big puzzle in terms of our sustainability master strategy. And here's the big picture. Here's planet Earth, and under some clouds to the upper left quadrant is Asheville. And take a breather, take a deep breath, and look at, think about Asheville in context with the rest of the globe. So astronauts, I believe this photograph is from an Apollo mission in the 70s or 60s. Maybe it was the first Apollo mission in the 60s. The overview effect is a way that scientists later described the perspective change, the perspicacity experience, or the new keen vision about seeing humanity and the planet in a different light, the ethic of an empathy of not seeing borders and not being as in touch with the news, and seeing the goodness of the planet and the nurturing factors, and that freedom, that new perspective, and and a feeling of wellness, and it's inspiring, and it inspires a creative um, thought process about the globe, and you see that thin atmosphere. It is a very valuable spot in the universe, and outside the atmosphere, it's very dangerous and risky. And that overview effect is a key idea of what I want to deliver as to what a strategic innovation mind is about. And that's a personal ability to be a better strategist and innovator. And it can be a group strategic innovation mind. In a world that is changing rapidly and in unpredictable ways, strategic innovation becomes vital to adapt to change. And that's something that Financial Times wrote many years ago now. So coup dur, and that French term in italics, coup d'la, it looks like it actually is pronounced coup dur, relates to being a strategist. And the definition of coup dur is ability to discern at one glance the tactical advantages and disadvantages of the terrain. Don't need to worry about saying coup dur in a sentence, but do know that innovative strategy is always worth learning more about and always doing better. And this is systems thinking to discern at one glance tactical advantages and disadvantages of the terrain. Systems thinking is about that overview effect, and it's about my approach to strategic innovation, and ideally more about the City of Asheville experience and the entire Asheville citywide experience going forward. So here's some principles of strategic innovation: intelligence, coordination of assets for value synthesis, communications, outcome-driven performance. So I can break this down. I just wanted to give you some context to things that I've encountered and thoughts that I've come up with about, in this case, a municipal context and a big issue like public safety. So when we start innovating around public safety and pull out the results of bringing down crime, here's some basic things that I think that can go into that. And I mentioned civilization health, and I've mentioned the term anthropogenic climate or the human-caused climate. And here's some civilization health factors when greenhouse gas emissions from human activities continue rising. Partially keeping average temperature rise less than 3 Celsius isn't a flexible outcome. You can't be 50% wrong and go past 3 Celsius. What is the strategic innovation solution design and outcome? How are we going to get ahead of the kinds of 6 outcomes that they're listing there? And that's something that a multi-billion-dollar management consulting corporation called Deloitte came up with, and it's the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also will talk about these similar factors. Where is civilization health headed? And that's why to have a civilization health index, but more so, what are we really doing to keep things way under 3 Celsius? 1.5 used to be the target, and it's going to be very difficult. So there's a pretty simple set of factors to my what I think strategic innovation structure is about. And by that I mean just solve a problem. Here's a challenge, here's a solution, and here's some potential outcomes. Here's that front end of strategic innovation, lots of data, things have been tried in the past, lessons learned. And here's the future approaching. We can't just think about the challenges, solutions, and outcomes and all of this data and past poor metrics on things like rising crime in Asheville. How are we maneuvering? What is our leadership coming up with? What state is the platform in? And we can talk about this in terms of what is America today, what is Asheville in terms of VOCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That the COA Restructure and Center of Progress platform, I'm interested in trying something new. And this is what I've got. I think a systems approach is needed, and getting more people, more leaders on the same page is important. And how, with a strategic innovation mind, a genius mind that isn't just about genius. It is about what is the empathetic and ethical and ethics approach to challenges, solutions, and outcomes. So you can request my candidate profile, and in the future I'm going to change my candidate profile PDF around to be called to be a master, sustainably master strategy guideline case study, and we'll start with Asheville. And that's also something that's a little bit rough right now, but I'm glad to get it out there. I'm happy to try something new. There's 12 solutions for Asheville, concluding with this concept template for a Asheville Sustainably Master Strategy, and I will be and feel free to contact me to get a copy. The contact page at grantmillin.com is how to do that. Here's those top 12 solutions. I'm not going to go through all of them. Housing Authority of the City of Asheville livability study is one of these solutions. Here's a way to develop solutions. It's called a fishbone diagram or cause and effect diagram. It's also called an Ishikawa diagram, named after a Japanese gentleman named Ishikawa, who was a management consultant or worked for corporations and created this way of listing issues, factors that drive a particular outcome. And I'm just calling it inaction, and in a minute I'll show a nice image of a inaction graphic that some local consultants came up with. And inaction, to me, can have factors of the rework hamster wheel. And hamster wheel, I think, is a idiom that or metaphor that most people are familiar with. Rework is a term from project management that it's about, if you say build a 7-story building and you get to the 3rd floor, construction is almost done, and you find that the foundation has some flaws that are major. How do you deal with that change and not tear down the whole work done so far? And then something I call failure of imagination. And failure of imagination, one application from that was from the 9/11 Commission report. And not to be scary, but that of course, September 11th, 2001 was a very serious event. But to think about what they concluded, that we believe the 9/11 attacks revealed 4 kinds of failures in imagination, in policy capabilities and management. Imagination, policy capabilities, and management can apply to a municipality, and you don't want things to get 100 to 200% worse in Asheville. So here's something about my services. I've talked about Delta, and a design and decision Delta is one of my. It's a framework that includes that front end of strategic innovation, challenges, solutions, and outcomes, the X Factor future, and leadership platform, and maneuvering, and it just creates one image out there. And challenge management, how to pick challenges and prioritize them as urgent and just needed, and desirable versus needed, necessary versus desirable, a solution design process. These basics come together in both parts of my services model, which includes a strategic innovation system that's about things like open project management. And feel free to take a break, and I'll be back in a second. If we were in person, I'd ask folks for questions. So strategic foresight. And strategic foresight, when it comes to sustainability, is pretty useful. I'm not going to read this, but starting with a opportunity departure point in the future, and a time frame for picking an alternative future about things like about changing crime trends in Asheville. Doing the status quo, too much transformation, not enough transformation. You do some scenarios and lay out a what I call a strategic innovation roadmap, a transformation plan. And by the way, City of Asheville's Reimagining Public Safety webpage, it hasn't been updated since 2020. So VOCA, I've shared that acronym. A risk register and threshold horizon model can help us to think about risks differently. And that y-axis to the left, up in the vertical, time and VOCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, events in cumulative duration, so time of all of these different kinds of events, and then the x-axis, or the horizontal, the VOCA events cumulative impact and magnitude, the actual impact, event impact, and then size, how many people are affected. With all of these issues and new ones that are really, I think, quite confusing for folks. Fentanyl, when people hear about fentanyl, they can often hear government officials talking about some opioid crisis like it's pharmaceutical opioids that are the problem, when pharmaceutical opioids is not a major current issue. No one's testing the waters with the pharmaceutical industry about unethical marketing of opioids. It's that's all under tighter control than ever. Like fentanyl patches in hospital contexts. Transnational organized crime is what is delivering illegally manufactured fentanyl and creating all those deaths, and unfortunately more felons, and law enforcement no doubt only arrests a certain number of the folks that are trafficking IMF, illegally manufactured fentanyl. We just went through COVID-19 and it's coming back. There's Ukraine. Housing used to be kind of a certainty in America. It was part of the American dream. Pretty cheap rents and ability to move up to home ownership. And then there's City of Asheville leadership. Are we heading towards COA, the City of Asheville leadership that is going past that uncertainty, extreme uncertainty horizon? And all of these things together can end up in an existential crisis. Civilizations do end in history. So with these events, there's an opportunity departure point. There's a beginning where those two axes meet, where a decision gets made, something is ignored, or something is an unknown unknown. And what is that intelligence? What is that genius that we're applying to the front end of strategic innovation and X Factor Future? It begins outside the box, outside that risk register, with a new approach to leadership and use of resources and maneuvering leadership and platforms. And here's a tool. When I talk about solution design, here's an example, a basic tool that I use. And maneuvering is defined as create, spread, accelerate, and intercept. So all of these are ideas that might be in a business plan or a strategic plan, that you're creating something new. You want to spread it to others. When you know it works, you accelerate it. You get more funding for it. And all times you are looking for places to intercept on the next opportunity. In business, beat competitors. And in municipalities, it's intercepting on these issues that you just saw in the uncertainty horizon model. And so what outcomes do you want in each of those arenas? What X Factor Future scenarios are you dealing with? And you write a strategy statement. And the strategy statement is a lot like a strategic plan, but it's the statement part where you say, this is why we are great. Our capabilities are great per the challenge, and here's how we're going to meet the challenge. And creating a few different options, and you might have a few different outcomes that match with one chain link strategy statement, and you might have strategies for each outcome. And that's the solution design futures process and the matrix for that, for developing new concepts and new solutions in the challenge, solutions, and outcomes side of strategic innovation structuring. So strategic foresight activities, you're creating something to address what is going to happen, what might happen instead of the outcome we prefer, and always what do you want to happen, and the tool is that I have to work with that is the Solution Futures Matrix. And here's some prompts to coincide, and I'm not going to go over all of these. How do we collaborate, and is there a hybrid model of collaboration with, say, City of Asheville nonprofits and the different adjacency partners? And thinking of strategic innovation horizons, what is transformational, what is breakthrough, what is incremental, and picking different goals that are, so not everything is transformational, just like the challenge management framework I'm about to show you. You kind of break down how you're getting to somewhere, to like goal 3, which is big transformational. Goal 1A, goal B2, 2B might help make goal 3C happen. And there's some pressure and opportunity arenas that are typical of any strategic innovation. And strategic innovation performance, what are you getting out of inputs and processes, and the outcome value, how does a system like Delta System with my consultancy assist? And by the way, City of Asheville could do their own version of strategic innovation. I'm just trying to stimulate some thought. And what performance direction is City of Asheville at? How do they work with inputs, processes, and outcomes, or challenges, solutions, and outcomes? And here's when I talk about intellectual capital. It's really basic in terms of dealing with data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. You might think of this as the scientific method, that there's hypotheses and theories. However, this JEDI-W, data, information, knowledge, and understanding, wisdom model, it relates to information technology actually, but these ideas are just super basic, that they apply to municipal contexts that have nothing to do with information technology. And this is the wisdom about an intellectual capital change, a big idea like restructuring the City of Asheville. When you stop and you have a framework like this, it just helps break things down, because that whole changing of a municipality, it's sort of coming at us, and it's not there. The consistency, coherence, and congruence is a little bit difficult. And I'm pretty smart, so I'm saying all of this. I'm creating this long presentation to say that it's a bigger situation with City of Asheville. There's just so much mission creep that's been going on, and everybody's when they get real, they're going to say, yeah, we need a different plan. Here's an example of me using all of my strategic innovation thoughts and capabilities, is talking about hydrogen systems, and that means fuel cells and electrolyzers. There's other ways of working with hydrogen or producing hydrogen, but just getting it right on fuel cells and electrolyzers is important, because when you're making hydrogen from water with an electrolyzer, and you're using renewables like solar and wind to help power the electrolysis process. Yeah, you want to not let hydrogen leak because it is a greenhouse gas, but you have the gaseous fuel you need in the renewable energy cycle that is missing right now, and that batteries. I'm not saying get rid of batteries, but people are overemphasizing what batteries can do. So I created this research, discovery, demonstration, and deployment timeline that shows the past, that front end of strategic innovation for hydrogen systems, and this is a timeline I actually created in 2019, and I talk about a North Carolina Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Infrastructure Act that didn't happen in 2019, by the way. So that this could be revised, but just after that, you'll see a third blue bubble on that gray before and after timeline that talks about a 2020 to 2030 period where hydrogen systems within the entire energy system, that role expands 10%. And when we stop that opportunity departure point, and it turns out that hydrogen systems had a 20% role in the anthropogenic to climate protection transition, and it's way down the road past 2030, it's too late. I'm really certain we needed hydrogen systems. And here's a design thinking tool, and I'm not going to go into it in depth right now, but this design thinking is how product development is done in many cases, and there's really no reason why people going into a City of Asheville boards and commissions restructure project can't see something like this and kind of slow down the process. And I'm not gonna. And they've done the initial brief and they want implementation, but the discover, define, design, to validate, research analysis, ideation, prototyping steps are, I think, kind of missing. So, and here's here's a process that coincides that I've come up with. Strategic innovation concept design, the solution design futures matrix can be used in conjunction. Something design thinking. These are design thinking questions. Is there demand as to answering desirability issues? Can we do it in terms of feasibility issues? Is it worth it in terms of viability issues? There's tasks to the far left. There's maneuvering. There's maneuvering arenas to the right. And keeping in mind that's just strategic innovation, mind leadership, practice of empathy, and ethics and genius. I think it's I think to conceive of restructuring City of Asheville, you need something. We know there's the demand. Can do it, and is it worth it? Are all good. That there is a transformation happening with City of Asheville. It's just what is the outcome. So I've talked about the Civilization Health Index and Civilization Health and Intellectual Capital. I know I'm going in different directions than just getting public safety sorted out in Asheville, but to get crime down, you need people in better shape that don't pick crime as an option, and more people coming to Asheville who may be crime criminally inclined. It's really, it's not just Asheville. So what are we designing? Is it just redesigning? Is it just City of Asheville and public safety and council committees? I think we need to keep going, and holding the big picture out there is not wrong at all. And how is it really, and how is some of it profitable? How is Asheville's example of sustainability big business, and solving all these problems make us a winning example of making the rest of the nation and even the rest of the globe work out good in coming years, instead of looking at more and more sustainability uncertainty. Take a break and take a look at this interesting illustration that kind of visually represents working with challenges, solutions, and outcomes differently in a bigger than ourselves context. And here again is the time to take a break, and I would ask questions if we were in person. And I'll go forward. I'm using the mix of strategy and innovation for the citywide Asheville performance and also for COA restructure purposes. So my strategic innovation practice from my management consulting for public good business represents the science of change that parallels human history. And I know that's saying a lot, but I'm just saying that there's a science of change out there that's not me. It comes from human history. I'm just kind of talking about it. So we just haven't talked about change as a science, but doing so makes perfect sense and seems very needed today. And then this is from a group with many roots that's actually an Asheville organization. They're another kind of change oriented consultancy, and their triangle of inaction, it's about climate. With many roots is about workshopping climate issues, and you can see that the individual who's interested in climate solutions, they're looking at government for answers, they're looking at corporations for examples, and the government and corporations keep saying it's the individual behaviors of consumers that consume a lot of greenhouse gases, but it's all three parties that are in the climate challenge, solution, and outcome picture. Something again to just take a break on is some quotes. And in the fields of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind. That's Louis Pasteur. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. And that's part of what I was talking about. What genius is going into the white space, seeing what others can't, and actually delivering on value. And that's author Schopenhauer. And then me, extrapolate change. So here's an application of what is civilization health, what is a civilization health index measuring, and in context of something, the X factor future of housing in Asheville. And it's not just homelessness that's the bad outcome of housing not working out. There's housing insecurity along the way. And some of the groups it's certainly about Asheville's African Americans, and it's about racial justice. But so many of the point in time count folks are called chronically homeless, which is a federal bureaucracy term for citizens with disabilities. And I don't like the term radical greed. I don't want to use it, but people building two or more homes for themselves, and just watching rents go up. I guess it's kind of fair maybe to use that term. And then there's some factors that there's some real costs to not getting housing right. And here is something from the Buncombe County 2043 Comprehensive Plan, and it's a really good graphic that they started with. I don't know how they changed that or if they're still using this, but they've got sustainability wrapped around the whole big picture. So they're making sustainability a constant in their version of municipal strategy, and it's global. It's outside the regional context, everything is sustainability, and they put equity at the center, and that's great. Now, what I did was I added these two thought bubbles about civic engagement and governing. That how people engage with all of these heavy duty issues, and then where does the buck stop? Governing and government and elected officials and city and county managers, they are there on the edge of all of this, and these aren't just issues. There's people that need to get the job done, and public safety is one arena. So another way of talking about strategic innovation is that strategic innovation is integrative as to choices concerning the past lessons learned while visualizing a more desirable future. So strategic innovation includes maneuvering to intercept on desired future outcomes with creativity and skills, while wisely using resources to deliver more valuable, significant legacy outcomes. And this is another slide that I'm going to work on or eliminate. But greenhouse gas targets define a desirable future. And we need. I've got an article about a bunch of conservation biologists begging for a crisis discipline to help them manage all of their conservation biology challenges that they're coming up with theories about. Surprisingly enough, measuring GHGs, greenhouse gases, and what to do about such an existential crisis as the anthropogenic climate to climate protection transition are not the same science. Biologists don't have all the answers, is basically what, or atmospheric chemists, they don't have all the answers. There's other management science ideas that are needed to actually change things around. Strategy and innovation practices need to be part of the crisis discipline we use to work with modern challenges, solutions, and outcomes. Again, feel free to take a break. Sustainably master strategy versus the healthy environment and safe community theme that came from the City of Asheville Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. And it's not the 2018, it's not bad that we have that comprehensive plan. We need to work with those ideas, but they try to merge that healthy environment and safe community concept with public safety in the current COA boards and commissions restructure project, and I'm gonna rearrange some of what's going on, and folks can chime in on what they think. So confusing healthy environment and safe community with public safety. This is the link to go and find where things are at with the COA boards and commissions restructure project. The fact that there are several rationales for the overall boards and commissions restructure project isn't bad or wrong, but for now, getting public safety strategy wrong is bad. That would be a bad thing. It's difficult to understand what the formulation and achievement of aims, strategy, and new and renewing value or innovation, long range and comprehensively, as in the case of the new council committee called Healthy Environment, Safe Community (HESC). It's difficult to understand. It's difficult to write about, and maybe I'm just asking too many questions, but I think it's about more than just public safety too. It's about how we're coming up with answers to public safety and just driving the ship down at City Hall. COA staffing is in negative attrition mode. We're losing staff, not just with Asheville Police Department, but with the Transportation Department, and I'm guessing other parts of City of Asheville. The COA budget has tripled over the past 20 years, and citizen solution demand is at an all-time high. What does HESC add as to consistent, coherent, and congruent public safety strategy? We have to get public safety strategy right. Along with climate issues, the HESC committee would cover things like recreation and stormwater management, the following 5 municipal strategic innovation matrix focus areas. Name the really big ideas municipalities like COA needs to focus on. The COA Boards and Commissions Restructure project uses themes from the 2018 Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, as I was said. The basic idea of the COA Boards and Commissions Restructure is simplicity somehow, and yet the HESC committee would seem to dilute our currently critical state public safety issues. Unfortunately, our public safety strategy seems to be at risk at this point. Again, the Asheville Sustainability Master Strategy and Municipal Strategic Innovation allows for human security strategy where substance abuse, disorder, mental illness, homelessness, and housing insecurity all get targeted, continuous focus over time. And there it is again. It's currently called public safety. It's going to be called the HESC committee. Here's again is my solution. Part of my solution is get 3 council committees going, and allow for more co-created strategic innovation. I won't go over these right now, but we need to keep the public in depth. But we need to keep the Public Safety Committee going. Focus on law enforcement, fire response, and emergency services. That includes disaster preparedness and disaster response. As a matter of fact, we need COVID-19 lessons learned as to how well COA responded, because COVID-19 is coming back. The System Management Committee. Now I'm going to do the second bullet point too. The System Management Committee will synthesize the activities of planning, economic development, housing, and COA operations, issues like finance and HR, and it's going to be water works, keeping water going, sanitation, transportation, the ART bus lines, and of course APD and AFD are COA operations issues. So these 3 council committees, they work they can work in harmony, and they can make a whole lot more happen. And probably the System Management Committee will have a whole lot going on. But I think for everyone's sake, to have that Public Safety Committee its own thing, and a JEDI-W committee that makes it clear that we're not going backwards on racial justice, and frankly we need to bring City of Asheville up to date on citizens with disabilities. I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good that it's actually, I've cut 3 council committees out. And the JEDI-W, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Wellness Committee is about equity, but equity backed up with real affordable and quality housing, real community economic development 3.0 solutions, versus what the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority has been delivering for decades, and the real stakeholders in the anthropogenic climate to climate protection transition are centered, or they are front and center, and all of us who need climate protection are at least getting the real picture. There is no citizen issue or COA operations matter that cannot be addressed in any of these 3 current and new council committees with COA restructure. The focus of the council committees is simplified, imaginative, continuous strategic management versus trying to come up with new priorities once a year, and all kinds of surprises coming up in those annual retreats because they're trying to create priorities and bring up big strategic issues once a year. That's daily that you need to get the real deal on municipal strategy. Next, the Municipal Strategic Innovation Matrix and Sustainability Master Strategy truly redefines the Asheville liberal democracy experience. And I know that's a different term, liberal democracy, but what I mean is governing in economics and culture, and liberal democracy is about civilization. And obviously we don't want authoritarian civilization. Okay, the Boards and Commissions Restructure project rolled out in February. Just to put a timeline on all this, I've shown you those 6 council committees as of May the 10th, but the restructure project rolled out. This idea of disappearing the current Public Safety Committee when this project was announced February 10th. So there was, I think it was called Healthy Environment and Safe Communities Committee back in February, but it's been a while now and I just don't think citizens get it, and the press hasn't really talked about just changing the Public Safety Committee this way. Here's that, when I talk about Vision 2036, it's about the Vision 2036 Strategic Operating Plan, and there's a web page that people can go, and they haven't updated from the last retreat on March 17th and 18th of 2022. We need that. We need to see that content. Some news reports, and there was a PowerPoint on the city website, but you want to see those laid out in one of their tables with all the priorities that they came up with, and they haven't updated that page since 2021, which was the previous retreat. And there's a link to the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan that I also mentioned, which is strategic for COA. Here's an example from San Diego of strategic management, and I just encourage people to take a look at this. And it's not that they have a perfect solution for municipal strategic management either, but it is. It's more than what the City of Asheville is doing, I think. And we could keep looking for these. Again, one of my goals is to get a list of the top 25 high performance municipalities across the nation and the free world, and see where Asheville fits into those characteristics. Again, these slides, I'm going to reduce these slides in the future and consolidate several of them. I appreciate anybody who's gone through this video this long, but I think I have the basis of a different platform for transforming municipalities and dealing with all the demands for change, and taking advantage of a more innovative state of affairs in 2022 with this huge sustainability uncertainty frontier that keeps showing up. Following the municipal strategic innovation matrix becomes the front end of an integrating sustainability master strategy where recreation, stormwater, and urban forestry in no way are cast aside. And there it is again, the municipal strategic innovation matrix, those 5 arenas, that strategic innovation teams made up of council members, city staff, Congress members from the Citizen Engagement Congress, nonprofits, adjacency partners, all work on value synthesis in those 5 arenas. And again, leadership dedicated civic engagement and intelligence. Intelligence is about a CIA version of intelligence gathering. We're not spying on the public at City Hall, but there's facts and figures and details to be gathered, and intelligence is also about acquiring and applying knowledge and skills in various contexts. Okay, the challenge management portfolio. And so what I'm going to show you next is a grid where urgent things are listed and what is desirable and necessary is listed, and it's not just all priorities, because of that, when I talk about the Vision 2036, they just list priorities. So we need to pick out key issues from Living Asheville and work on all the priorities that have come up in Vision 2036 strategic retreats. But we can end up with 1,021 priorities that are not filtered through a challenge management portfolio and portfolios tool as to what is urgent down to simply what is desirable and necessary. Mixing in the full plate of COA Public Safety Strategy with a mixed agenda of recreation, climate, stormwater management is unscrewed, and I'm going to try and come up with a better word. I'm trying to curse. I think I've done pretty well at not cursing or getting angry. I'm trying to be thoughtful, actually. With the following municipal strategic innovation framework. Or excuse me, I've shown you the framework, and now I'm going to show you the challenge management portfolio tool. So there it is, picking out what's urgent and what is very high value, what is high value, what is medium value, and what is essential and desirable value in terms of challenges, solutions, and outcomes. And because just listing priorities, and they talk about how priorities get implemented in their process, and when a new policy is or new funding request is introduced for council votes, the staff adds pros and cons, and pros and cons aren't necessarily wrong, but the strategic management of what happened each quarter and then each year is an assessment of all of these policies and funding requests that happened each year, and what happened and what results we're getting, and what's the civilization health index outcome. So this is another tool. And when it comes to COA challenge management, how are we doing this ranking of what's urgent besides picking what is essential and versus desirable and necessary versus I would like to see this happen, and starting there. Not sure it gets done, and opportunities need to be taken when a grant comes up. An application usually should go out, but for example, American Rescue Plan Act funds. That was a big injection of revenues for public good issues in Asheville and Buncombe County, and we'll see what kind of outcomes came from all that money being distributed. But there's other things like climate migration that who gets what housing stock, and how are you getting the private real estate market involved in our housing solutions. That's a different kind of challenge. It's not about the public economy, and it's a lot. I'm just starting to throw out a different approach with the COA restructure, because it seems like we're going to do a whole lot more than just cut some volunteer boards and commissions, and cut the number of some volunteer boards and commissions, and change around what the public safety committee is called, and adding a whole bunch of layers of stuff on what public safety is about. So when you make everything high to urgent value, a whole bunch is loaded in there, and you don't really define what is essential versus desirable, and what goes in medium. It can just start looking at like a whole lot. And but when you get more decisive, because strategy is about decisions, you can take a lot off that the urgency stuff and put it elsewhere, and that's actually a good thing for consistency, coherence, and congruence. So learning the difference between strategic innovation and just average. So I'm sorry that some of these slides didn't go as well as I want to, and I'm going to cut some of them, go back and cut some of them. It is the eve of the primary election, and I'm going to go back and work on this whole presentation once again. I have tried some versions of this presentation, and I see that 133 that I've got to just change the slide number, correct the slide number there. But in any case, so this graph is about that subject of performance, and it might be, and you can see a bunch of business resources like Harvard Business Review and McKinsey and Company informed this graph. And one of the ideas is called jumping the curve, that there's market trends in business, and things go up and things go down. There's a change factor. Like right now, there's a whole bunch of different environmental factors, and I'm not meaning that's funny when you talk business, because environment is the business environment, not the natural environment, and it's an example of the way the business world is externalized nature environment issues. But so some change event, that triangle means delta change, happens, and the business declines, the market declines, and therefore business doesn't have the market and the consumers to purchase their services or products over time, and the performance changes. So the performance is changed by some change, external change factor. The blue line, though, is about an organization working with strategic innovation. There are those yellow squares or milestones where you've done some solution design work and you've come up with a new concept for change. You're implementing something like COA restructure if you're a municipality. And when events happen, external events happen, you're at a higher level of performance. You're playing in that arena of the top 25% of strategy that you have defined as being desirable. You're a municipality that's like the top 25 municipalities across the nation and free world And when some external event happens, a disaster, the market changes, you're more prepared. Um, when others decline, you're in better shape. Here's some explanation on what I just talked about, and just trend lines in general. To the left, some undesirable phenomenon is taking off. The greenhouse gases are going up. Sustainably looks more uncertain, and with strategic innovation, you are prepared. You're prepared to intervene, and you intervene. Um, Maybe that blue arrow happens further. In my previous in this model, I am talking about an opportunity departure points and being more ahead of the game than this where this blue line is. But let's say things have transgressed for a while, and that's where you are. Things are in decline, and you start working with the X factor future, the positive aspects of the future, and jump in and ride the next wave because you're aware and you're capable of turning things around. And here's that sustainability master strategy again as an example of intervening. So join this movement. It's my campaign, and in the future I want to talk more about the Center of Progress. And COA Restructure is not about me. It is about the people of Asheville, and it's about the other council members who are going to be on council with me, should I be elected. And I'm going to talk about all of this, whether or not I make it on council in 2022. Thank you for hearing me and going through all of this. And I promise I'm going to go back once again and check in on all of these slides and make improvements. And I look forward to communicating again in the future with allies.